So welcome everyone. We're live on YouTube for our second day of the regional week presented by VECA. So today is Prairies Day, and we're starting this with Rick Prees, who's our Prairies chair, so the Prairies regional chair. So Rick, well, I just want to thank VECA as sponsors and Everlast, of course. And Rick, so how are you doing this morning?
Well, I'm doing well, except for technical difficulties with my camera, as everybody I'm sure can see. Good to be here, coming to you from the Prairie provinces. It's a magical place in Lizard Lake, Alberta. Welcome, everyone. I just wanted to give you a little update of what the Prairies Committee and the regional committees in general are all about. Basically, with our committee, we wanted to address regional concerns and concerns that mattered more to the region than necessarily the overall strategy, which of course is important as well, but we wanted to feed that down to the regions a little bit more closely. My conversations, we actually had a lot of people that showed interest. We have 2 new members that showed up, and a lot of that because of these regional meetings, which was Bethel Windows. I hope Sam's on the line watching, as well as Alberta Vinyl Window and Door, Ron Stepaka, who's also my co-chair. So, I thank those people for stepping up, and definitely they see value into doing these things on a regional basis. We are still looking for more participants. We would love to have, some participation from Manitoba, Saskatchewan. You guys are more than welcome to join us anytime. Just give myself or Stefan, drop us a line. We'll be more than happy to hook you up. Before I turn everything over to Al, though, I do want to thank all of the people that really put this together. A lot of you don't see them. Obviously, Stefan and Mara, especially Lane from Fenestration Canada, who has done a great job at keeping us all on our toes and making sure that we're all doing a good job, and she has done a great job, as well as our sponsors, Becca. Thank you so much for stepping up, as well as Everlast. We really appreciate it. So with that, I'm now going to turn you guys over to Al. You're in good hands. We'll talk to you later.
Great. Thanks, Rick. So Al, now for your presentation today, what is it you're going to talk about?
Well, we're going to cover 2 things. We're going to give an update on the Spring 2020 public review, and we're going to talk about the update to the NRCan market transformation roadmap.
Okay.
So we're going to spend more time on that second topic, but we'll run through the where we're at with the public review to the Spring 2020 of the National Building Code. And if you could let me share my screen, Steph, I'll...
Sure. Give me a second. Here you go.
Yeah.
So I'll just use this moment to invite all of you, anytime you have questions, either on YouTube, we're live right now, or on the Zoom call, you can send your questions and we'll get to them as soon as possible, and we'll make sure that we answer all of them before the end of the call.
Great. And you got my screen there, Steph?
Yes, you can
Great.
go ahead.
So as many of you may know, we had a public review of changes to the National Building Code, the 2020 National Code. It ran from January to March 13th of this year. All the code changes in this public review focused on stricter energy performance requirements in both large buildings and small buildings, and the introduction of tiers or steps of better than base code performance. For those of you who have heard about the BC Energy Step Code, the tiered code requirements that were put into this public review were similar in concept to what was introduced in British Columbia a few years earlier.
Sorry, Al, I would just say if you can just switch into like presenter mode, we could see it full screen. Right now we see kind of your software.
I guess I'm sharing the wrong screen. Okay. How's that?
Yeah, here you go. Perfect.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So the tiered approach is interesting because it allows municipalities to adopt higher levels of performance independently of the timetable that the national code will do that. And so with a tiered approach, the code defines in advance several steps of energy performance, trying to map out the future where we're going towards 2030. And with the steps, at some point, everybody's going to be climbing from one step to the next. But the tiered approach does allow municipalities to jump ahead and adopt a higher tier at certain points in time if they want to. And that has an interesting effect on the market in the sense that it starts to create local demand and for better performing products and for the technologies and design approaches that are needed to achieve those higher levels of performance. So Fenestration Canada and other associations also commented on changes to both the National Energy Code for Buildings and Part 9. So following the public review, of course, the standing committees that look after the different parts of the code began to review those public comments in late May, and they were scheduled to complete the review by the end of June. But there was so much feedback, so many questions and proposals for amendments, especially on small buildings in Part 9, that several of these committees are continuing to meet. They've missed their June deadline. They met through July, they've met through August, they've been meeting through September, and they're going to continue through the fall until they get through all the issues. There were certainly a lot of new content in this set of code changes, and I think that's why it's stirred so much discussion. So as a result of this, the publication of the 2020 code has been postponed to December 2021. Jeff Baker has been monitoring the work of these committees and has issued a report to the association's funding its work. And so my comments here are taken from Jeff's report. I have myself tried to follow the discussions on some of these code committees, but the meetings have been going on for such a long time that I just haven't had the time to get involved in all of them. We've had literally weekly meetings, sometimes twice a week of the various task groups. And these are long meetings that certainly require a lot of attention. So these are the changes that Fenestration Canada commented on, as well as some of the other associations and what the current situation is. So one of the changes for the National Energy Code for Buildings was a significant reduction in air leakage through doors. Literally, they were taking the air leakage levels down to levels below NAFs. Basically, they were wanting things like balcony doors, for example, on high-rise buildings to have air leakage levels around the level of a fixed window. And in main entrance doors, they wanted levels that you would have like E3 performance levels. So the industry really had concerns about that because we don't believe that the products can actually reach those levels reliably. And the task group reviewing the changes has accepted the industry's concerns and has decided to reverse them. So it appears that the task group has recommended to the Standing Committee on Energy Efficiency that they walk back that air leakage indoors. And that's what the task group is recommending. As of Jeff's report at the end of August, they had not yet done that, but we expect they will. There was another proposed change that was going to reduce the U values of all fenestration products across the board. It was like a percentage reduction for all products. Again, this is for the National Energy Code for Buildings. So this change would have affected large buildings, not small buildings, not Part 9 buildings. The industry had largely opposed these reductions, but in the end, they reached a compromise where the door U factors remained unchanged, while the skylight and other fenestration product reductions were accepted by the industry. And this was kind of a compromise because it was related to the next change we're going to look at, which is proposed change 1541. This, they also we're going to address what they call the fenestration and door-to-wall ratio. So think about a window-to-wall ratio in your mind. That's really what this fenestration and door-to-wall ratio, same concept in the National Energy Code for buildings. And they wanted to reduce the fenestration and door-to-wall ratio for all buildings on the prescriptive path. And that would have really made it tough for a lot of fenestration products to qualify under the performance path as well, simply because the base building case energy use would be so low, you'd have trouble meeting those requirements with the windows we have today. So given the compromise on the previous code change, the standing committee agreed to withdraw this one. They're not going to reduce the window-to-wall ratios at this time. The Part 9 changes were related to two proposed changes, both of which introduced these tiered requirements into Part 9 buildings. So we had one change, 1611, which introduced prescriptive tiered levels, and 1617, which was tiered performance compliance. And basically the difference between them is that the performance path actually would require a HOT 2000 model for every home, for every building. And that means you've got to have energy advisors that can do the analysis. You have to train builders how to think in terms of doing an energy model for each building. So that's something that is done in the BC Energy Step Code, but it hasn't been common practice yet in Canada. So in parallel to that performance path, they introduced a prescriptive path where builders just had to score 10 points to get to tier 1, for example. And depending on which energy conservation measure they chose, they would get anywhere from a couple of points to as many as 5 or 6 or 7. The interesting thing that we noticed is that changing to high performance windows with a U factor of 1.2 in that area, which would be, let's say, the Energy Star level today, would get builders up to 6 or 7 points in the colder parts of the country. So the tiered approach does have the effect of really recognizing the improvement that it makes to upgrade windows, let's say from double glazing to triple glazing, and it really shows up either in a higher point allowance or in the energy modeling when they use HOT 2000. Long and the short of it is that these well-intentioned efforts to introduce tiered requirements into Part 9 led to a lot of questions. Associated with those were code changes on mandatory air tightness testing. And basically, there's just been so much discussion, so much feedback was received from the public that the code committees are still working their way through all the issues. That's basically where we're at. So here we are, it's the end of September, and we're almost into October, and we're still waiting for that public review period to be completed. So definitely a challenging set of code requirements, and but we'll be learning about them once they sort things out and see how that plays out. Any questions from our callers or our listeners?
For now, I don't see any questions coming in. Let's give it a couple of seconds. Nope, nothing yet.
Okay. Well, the subject that I think may perhaps be of more interest to our viewers today is an update on the Natural Resources Canada Market Transformation Roadmap. And we're just going to set that up.
Sure.
So this is a presentation I'm giving at each region, updating on where we're at with the market transformation roadmap. two things we're going to look at: an update on the process that we're in with Natural Resources Canada, but also we're going to look at the question, where are we at as an industry today on the market transformation roadmap? We know that their long-term plan is to make windows much more energy efficient than they are today. And in terms of trying to get an answer on where we might be at, we took a deep dive into the Energy Star database. And so I'll present to you the findings of that because I think they're very interesting in terms of a snapshot of where we are at with respect to performance and technology. So on June 10th, we were given a presentation on the market transformation roadmap. I'll just back up a little bit here, is that, we're involved, we've been having discussions with NRCan, and Fenestration Canada is one of the groups that's involved in the Windows sector consultations related to this roadmap. So this is a presentation that I took, was one of the attendees on June, presented by Jamie Houlihan, Director of the Equipment Division, giving us essentially, this was an implementation launch presentation, restarting industry participation in the market transformation roadmap. So these are slides taken from that presentation. And basically, Jamie reviewed how we got there, the history that led to this market transformation program, and looked on the implementation side, where are we going? What are the next steps? So he reviewed it, and I'll review it for your sake as well. This whole effort was launched back in early 2017 by the federal, provincial, and territorial governments who are under the Energy and Mines Ministers Conference of Canada. And this initiative is related to Canada's climate change commitments to the Paris Climate Change Accords. And the prioritization exercise by the federal, provincial, territorial governments identified 3 equipment areas that, based on their current energy use and potential greenhouse gas emissions, they felt needed to be targeted. And the goal was, with respect to residential windows, they account for up to 35% of home heat losses. So they were considered an area to work on for improvement. Space heating is the largest source of energy consumption in Canada's building sector, representing half or more of the energy use in homes and buildings. That was another area they targeted. And the third was water heating, which was the second largest source of energy consumption in the building sector. So they felt that trying to accelerate the improvement of the performance in these 3 areas was going to be important to help us achieve the goals of managing climate change. They outlined aspirational goals over the short, medium, and long term for these 3 equipment areas, and they identified the need for a market transformation roadmap, a coordinated map, process to help these industry sectors actually make progress over a defined time period. In the summer of 2019, they worked on identifying gaps, prioritizing activities, building a work plan. In the fall and winter, they committees and worked on aligning funding to help move forward. And implementation was supposed to start work here in 2020, 2021. As part of this, they initiated something called a lay of the land exercise, where they wanted to document existing and planned activities. Is my internet connection still good there, Steph?
Yeah, I mean, it skipped a little for a couple seconds.
Skipped a bit? Okay, I had
yeah.
a little announcement here on my computer that we had a glitch.
Yeah.
Okay.
We didn't miss much. We didn't miss virtually. We didn't miss anything.
Okay, great. The goal was to identify initiatives that could be built upon. In other words, if they could get a snapshot of where we're at with respect to various initiatives, research programs, government incentives for more energy efficient products, rebates for Energy Star products, things like that, they wanted to sort of get an idea of what is the whole suite of measures that are being deployed across the country at various levels to help the industry move in this direction. And in order to, they wanted to get a handle on that so that they could better coordinate those activities, avoid duplication, see where there are gaps, share progress and lessons learned. So they're trying to approach this in a pretty comprehensive fashion. And the idea was to provide information to guide the, what were at that time called implementation teams, to actually support specific objectives. What were called implementation teams then are now what they're calling expert teams. So they reviewed the activities from 2019, spring and summer, the establishment of these teams, developing detailed work plans in the spring, and again, to roll out new projects in the fall. It turns out that the fall 2019 election kind of put the whole process on hold, along with much other government work. And we haven't really heard much from NRCan during this past year. But we did make efforts to stay in touch. Back in February, Steph arranged a meeting with him and I to meet with Jamie Houlan and their team in Ottawa, just to let them know that we're still interested in being part of these discussions since we hadn't heard much from them, and wanting to maintain a relationship to continue to be involved in the process. In June, we had Kimberly Curran, Chief of Standards Development, speak at our spring conference. Her talk was about the pros and cons of regulation and market transformation at a high level. And in August, finally, the process was kind of restarted. We were invited to another webinar with Natural Resources Canada, basically letting us know that this market transformation work has restarted and we're moving ahead. They've announced a new staff project coordinator position that they created. Ashley Mascarenas is a consultant who's actually managing the whole suite of communications with the expert teams and co-chairs. He's coordinating logistics and materials for meetings. They've set up a Microsoft Teams work environment for communication between the teams and recording and documentation, because this is really a 10-year project. This is a project that's supposed to continue on till 2030. And so, they're putting together the infrastructure for something that will be able to carry us through. They announced this lay of the land database, of documented projects and activities in window technology, water heating, and space heating. When I looked into it for the Windows side, it looked like it was mainly a list of government and utility incentive plans. There were also information about some research initiatives underway. So they've done some work on this area, but they're certainly going to have to add to it as we move forward. But the idea is to basically keep track of what's going on at a national level. On this webinar, they also reviewed the typical steps in a market transformation roadmap, starting from research and development through demonstration of new technologies, increasing awareness and information to a wider group of industry, providing training. Once these technologies are actually deployed to some extent in the field, there's the introduction of incentive programs. Let's say in the case of window, incentives for the higher performing products. And eventually, as the new technology is widely available in the market, at that point, codes and standards start implementing that higher level of performance once the industry already has the capacity to deliver it. So, this is kind of the process that they're trying to foster with new technologies in these three areas. They gave an update on Windows, basically just announcing that the new Energy Star specification took effect on January 1st of 2020. Which of course had a significantly higher energy efficiency than the previous spec. And they also announced that they had begun to engage stakeholder consultations with organizations like Fenestration Canada, Fenestration Association of BC, and the Quebec Association, the AVFQ. They also gave us an update on the new governance structure that will that is managing this process. So at the high level, we have the Federal, Provincial, and Territorial Steering Committee, co-chaired by Jamie Houlan of the Equipment Division and Nat Gosman of the Ministry of Energy in British Columbia. Below that, there's the Roadmap Advisory Council. And below that are the three expert teams: window experts, space heating experts, and water heating experts. The expert teams will provide technical input and assessment of existing activities. So that's really what they're looking for these expert teams to do. Basically to advise them on what's possible and advise them on what's going on in the industry. Providing a forum for sharing ideas and identifying new activities related to research, development, and deployment. And thirdly, to address barriers and obstacles to the adoption of the technologies that are going to make higher performance possible over the next 10 years. They've actually now appointed chairs for the three committees. In the case of Windows, the Natural Resources Canada co-chair is Rob Singlehurst, and I've been appointed as the co-chair for Fenestration, from Fenestration Canada as the co-chair for Windows. It's my understanding that these co-chair positions are going to be reviewed every year. So it's not like somebody is going to be sitting on this committee indefinitely. They're going to want to rotate people through this position over time. And currently I'm the co-chair with Rob, but we're continuing to have participation of Jeff Baker, who was the co-chair last year when the process was first launched. They have a plan to conduct regional workshops in the coming year or two. The idea here is to have up to 6 regional workshops across the country that would involve experts and representatives from all levels of government, industry, academia, and efficiency organizations. The workshops could help to inform the development of regional blueprints, outlining regional policy, highlighting best practices, local success stories, identifying challenges, dealing with those, and highlighting areas for future regional and national collaboration. So that I think they're planning 3 workshops, one year and 3 more the following year. And the topics will reflect regionally specific circumstances, opportunities, and challenges related to roadmap priority areas. So I think there's going to be, a fairly widespread participation in this process. The second thing that they want us to do in this process is to help them develop an annual progress report of how the industry is moving ahead. Are we making progress towards the goals? And they've been using in their reports until now these kind of scorecards for windows, for space heating, and for water heating. And so this is, for example, the space heating technology scorecard, in terms of identifying various levels of technology, and the green indicates that they're, everything's good. Yellow means that we have only partial understanding or ability to implement something, and red means we're just not there yet. So NRCan is looking to the experts teams to start the conversation with industry participants this fall. I've discussed with my co-chair the membership of this experts team. We started out with the list that Jeff Baker had worked on with this co-chair last year. We added some new names to it. I'm happy to say the invitations were sent out this weekend, and most of the people have already applied that they're willing to be part of this committee. Of course, the goal of the committees, as we've said, is to identify barriers and also opportunities, report on progress to the Roadmap Advisory Council, and ultimately inform the federal, provincial, and territorial committee of how things are going. We're expecting to have the first meeting of the Windows experts team the week of October 12th, and their next advisory council meeting, the level above the expert teams, are going to meet on October 21st. So basically, the process is now underway in a way that it hasn't been for a year or more. So given that we're talking about revitalizing this process, given there are questions about where are we at on the roadmap, I thought it'd be worth doing a bit of research in this area. And we looked into this over the past month or two. At Windor 2018, the window industry's progress toward these market transformation goals was presented with reference to the report from the Energy and Mines Ministers Conference in August 2018. And this is the the document that's discussing this market transformation roadmap. And this is where they thought windows were at as of 2018, the fall of 2018. And I'm just looking at it sort of layer by layer, just to help you understand where they think the industry is at. When it comes to windows with a U factor of 1.6, which is probably today the average code level across the country, do we have the technology? It exists, yes, green. Does the market have access to it? Yes. Do we know about it? Yes. Is it affordable? Yes. Is it acceptable to the public? Yes. The form, fit, and function is acceptable, not a problem. When it comes to windows with a U factor of 1.2, we have some yellow lights. This is the level at which Energy Star is at today. Since January of this year, actually, you need a U factor of at least 1.22 to qualify for the Energy Star program. And the thinking was, does the market know about the technology? Well, to some extent. Is the technology affordable? To some extent, was their thinking. When it came to the aspirational goal for 2030, where the aspirational goal was a window U factor of 0.8, they had concerns. Does the technology exist? Well, to some extent. Does the market have access to it? To some extent. Does the market know about the technology? No. And is it affordable? No. Is the form, fit, and function acceptable? To some extent. So they felt there was a high degree of uncertainty about whether we had the technology in the window industry to fully deploy windows at the 1.2 level, and much more uncertainty at the 0.8 level. So I was thinking, where are we at on the roadmap today? And how can we get a glimpse as to where we are at? Does that scorecard really represent the capabilities of our industry with respect to our ability to meet those 2030 market transformation goals? So to explore this question, we analyzed the most recent version of the Energy Star database we could get in August, which is the June 5th version. And we restricted our analysis to the products that were qualified to the level of Energy Star most efficient. And we were looking at, the Energy Star program lets you get to these levels by the U value path and also by the energy rating path. But I wanted to look at just the U value path products because we know that the building codes are no longer, there's no energy rating path in the proposal for a tiered code. And essentially the energy rating path is going to disappear from the code with the 2020 code, simply because it's been proven to be associated with overheating discomfort in very energy efficient buildings. So it's a great option for existing buildings, but it's not the best option for designing the buildings and the windows of the future. So I was looking just at products that were qualified by U value. and we summarized the data to see what we could learn about the products in the database today to get an idea of where we're at. So Energy Star has defined the most efficient value on the basis of U value at a metric U value of 1.05 or an inch-pound U value of 0.18. We analyzed this smaller data set that only looks at most efficient qualified by U value to identify the number of unique product lines by operating type, frame material, and U factors categories. And basically, we didn't just arbitrarily, sorry, I'm running ahead of myself. When we filtered a database, we found that there were products at each one of these performance levels. Basically, in inch-pound units going from 0.18 all the way down to 0.11. We had products at every one of these levels in the database. And this highlighted 0.82 zone. This is the level of performance that the aspirational goal for 2030. So already in the database, we have products that perform better than that. And so we broke this data down, and here's what we found. If we look at all of the records in the Energy Star database, this includes regular Energy Star as well as most efficient. We had 366,000 records, like individual entries in the database. If we restrict it to just the most efficient products, that was down to 143,000. And if we restricted it to most efficient by U value, we're looking at about 128,000 records, or 35% of all the records in the database. If we look at this data now, not by records, but by the number of manufacturers participating in the Energy Star program, as of this database, as of June, there were 358 manufacturers with products in the database. 282 of them had products in the most efficient category. And if we look at most efficient products by U value only, we had 270 manufacturers, or 3/4 of the manufacturers in the database had products with Energy Star most efficient designation qualified by U value. So that's quite interesting. Think about that. We already have 3/4 of the manufacturers in the Energy Star database, or 270 of them with products at this level of performance. We don't have an exact count of how many window manufacturers there are in Canada, but the thinking is that it's probably around 400. So we have a significant number of manufacturers in the country already with products that are very highly energy efficient. And when we break that data down, I'm going to give you now then the next 3 slides, sort of 3 different ways of looking at that data. In this chart, we're looking at the distribution of Energy Star most efficient products by the U value. So for example, at 1.05, we had a total of 730 product lines from 255 manufacturers had products at this 1.05 level, 94% of them. If we looked at the next step down in U value, we had 573 product lines from 216 manufacturers. And as you can see, as the U value gets lower, there are less and less products. But if we look at this category here, sorry, the yellow outline's in the wrong spot here. It's interesting. Let's just move it over to where it should be. This is live editing of a PowerPoint slide deck on the internet. You don't get to see this every day, folks.
Right now we see your email page, not the, yeah, okay.
There we go. Okay. Here we go. So this is the level of performance that is the aspirational goal of the 2030 Market Transformation Program. And what we see that there are 84 manufacturers with 109 product lines, representing about roughly a third of the manufacturers in the Energy Star database with products at this level today. So I think that is significant. If we look at the breakdown of the Energy Star most efficient product lines by the operating type, what kind of products are these? You'll see that here in this row, we've broken them down by awning, casement, single casement, double hung, double slider, dual action, fixed picture, fixed awning. What we see is that at the level of Energy Star most efficient, we have products in every single category. And we can see that at the metric U value of 1.05, the largest number of products, as the U factor gets lower, we have fewer and fewer products at that level. If we look at the aspirational goal, 0.82, this is the distribution of products. You know, we have, something like 20 casement products. Of course, it's easy to get into high energy performant categories with fixed windows. It's the operable windows that are the problem. It's harder to get that low energy performance in an operable product simply because you have more frame and less glass. So we don't have that many products in the database at this time, but certainly just a little bit above that with U factors in the range of 0.9 to 1, we've got quite a lot of products at that performance level right now. So that's interesting to know this is where we're at today. And if we look at it by frame material, we broke down the total distribution of products. This is now Energy Star most efficient. So this is U factor of 1.05 metric or 0.18 inch pounds. This is the breakdown of all the products. We see that we have every frame material represented and every operating style represented. There are products across the spectrum here. So I thought it was quite interesting to notice this, even though most of the products are in the vinyl category, because vinyl is both, very low conductance and relatively inexpensive compared to other frames materials. We do have products in aluminum vinyl, aluminum wood, vinyl wood, wood metal clad, and wood. We've got products from every frame material and every operating mode that are at the Energy Star most efficient level. And this is where we're at today in 2020. So I think this is helpful to appreciate where we're at with respect to the technology today. And I just wanted to share this information with you and see if you have any questions or thoughts about what that tells us with respect to where we're at, ideally where the government would like us to go, and to think about what should the aspirational goal be for 2030. And Natural Resources Canada has said that they won't confirm the final number for another 2 years or so. I believe it's 2022. They want to lock down the number by that point in time. So I think getting an idea of what the industry can achieve today should inform those discussions. And I think this is information that we're sharing at this conference, with all of our participants. And we're looking forward to letting this kind of data inform our thinking about where we might need to go in the future and what's possible. and where should the final aspirational number be? Should it stay at 0.8? Should it be revised up to a higher number? These are things that are going to be looked at, I think, in the next couple of years. So that's the end of what I've got to share today in this session, and wondering if there's any thoughts or comments from folks that are on the line today.
So we'll give it a couple seconds. Do you have any question, comments? You can use the Q&A button, the chat button, or you can come and talk with us with just use the raise hand. And if not, we have people connected also on YouTube, so I'll keep an eye on that. I think it was pretty straightforward and clear, so we might not have tons of questions.
My impression is, based on what's in the Energy Star database, these are actual products that manufacturers have spent the time to do the modeling, the testing, get the information into the database, to pay fees, to have, basically there's a lot of financial investment in having products qualified at this level. And so, these are real products you could buy. Arguably, some of the products in the database probably don't have the ideal glass package that you would want to have in a residential window. Some of them are relying on triple glazed units with 3 low E coatings, one of them being on the room side surface, which some people might feel is not the most optimal kind of glass you would want to have in your home. A unit with higher visible light transmittance and without the room side coating, generally that's considered to be a more desirable kind of a product from a glass point of view. It's also less expensive. So some of the products are getting down to these levels of performance with a glass package that isn't optimal. But what we can see is that it's definitely possible to reach very low U values below 1.05 with a good glass package, a glass package that consists of a triple pane unit and 2 internal low E coatings. So we can see now that we can do those kinds of things, that our manufacturers have figured out how to design products that can get there. And so I think this, knowing this should definitely help to inform discussions and turn them into more concrete discussions. What has to happen to frames? Really, when it comes to glass, there is no glass technology. There's no next generation glass technology that is not available in the market today. If it's not available in the market today, it will not be available at wide scale from coast to coast across Canada 10 years from now. So really, to achieve the 2030 goals, I think the goals have to be set at a level that today's technologies can get to. And I think looking more closely at what manufacturers can do today is very helpful in helping us to understand, realistically, where should the 2030 goals be. So okay. I'm looking forward to discussions at this, both in this experts team, which will have broad representation of Canadian manufacturers and suppliers in the window industry, as well as in groups like Fenestration Canada and other associations in thinking about these issues.
Okay, we have a question here. So from Eddie, regarding the aspirational goal of 0.8 U factor for 2030, are you experiencing more resistance or acceptance in certain regions of Canada versus others? Or is there general consensus on this?
Well, I don't think there's a general consensus on this yet. Mm-hmm. This is a number that the government came up with. They announced that this is an aspirational goal. We're not sure where they got the number. At least let me rephrase this. I'm not sure where they got the number. It might be that they know that passive house windows in Europe are qualified at a U factor of 0.8, but they're qualified under European environmental conditions for Central Europe, which is a pretty warm climate. It's the same kind of climate zone as you might have down around Windsor in Toronto, Ontario, or Vancouver, where it's a relatively warm climate. Pretty much anywhere else in Canada, you need an even better window. But just to back up, a product that can qualify at 0.8 in Europe will probably only hit 0.9 in North America, because of our cold climate, we evaluate the U value at different boundary conditions. Right. So in Europe, it's 0 outside and 20 degrees inside, a 20-degree temperature difference for the U value calculations. In North America, we're almost double that. We go from -18 to +20. We're at like 38-degree temperature difference in winter from indoor to outdoor. And basically, the higher the temperature, the higher the rate of heat flow, and the same product will have a as you have a higher temperature differential from indoor to outdoor, the same product will have a worse U factor at the higher temperature differential and a better U factor at the lower temperature differential. I'm kind of oversimplifying it, but what I'm trying to say is that the aspirational goal of 0.8, if it was based on Passive House, would be more logically 0.9 in North America, given that the same level of technology that would give you 0.8 at the European
would
conditions would be giving you 0.9 under North American conditions. So,
okay.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. We have another question here. There's much talk about window thermal performance targets. What is happening on the swing door side? Will we see challenges indoors as well?
That's a good question, because until now, doors have not been part of the discussion. Mm-hmm. I think the thinking is, well, on the one hand, you could argue that a few years ago, the insulated doors were performing better than windows, in terms of energy performance. And you could also look at it from the point of view that a typical house package has a lot more windows than it has side hinge doors, typically. Yeah. So the biggest target to hit was that large number of windows that had relatively poor energy performance. So I have not heard any discussions about, you might say 2030 goals for doors. Has not been in any discussion I've heard of. So I don't anticipate that there will be strong regulation on doors in this 2020 to 2030 timeframe. But this is just my opinion. It just simply has not been discussed.
Okay. So I think it's good for now. Since we don't have a lot of questions, I'll invite people to attend the next webinar that's going to take place at 11 a.m. This morning. It's going to be about window trends and technology and building design. We have quite the list of guests on that one, so I would invite you not to miss it. I'm going to thank again VECA and as presenting sponsor and Everlast as gold sponsor. So Al, if you don't have anything else for now, I think we'll say see you at 11.
Sounds great. Look forward to reconvening again with the next discussion.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.